They were the glamorous women who made the whole world fall madly in love with them. But when the lights went out and the camera lenses pulled back, the truth behind the scenes literally stank in every sense of the word. Some were symbols of American beauty, yet they carried a horrifying body odor so bad that their co-stars had to grit their teeth and hold their breath. Others reeked of alcohol, chemical smoke, or even the cold sweat of people being drained dry by the Hollywood machine. So who were they? And what was really being hidden behind that glamorous halo? Let's uncover the never-before-told secrets in today's video. Tula Bankhead. Open chaos and an unhidden body odor. In 1944, on the cramped and stifling set of Lifeboat, legendary director Alfred Hitchcock was intensely directing a scene involving an elevator. The atmosphere was tense when suddenly, the demanding director frowned slightly. A strong, unpleasant smell had just hit him straight in the nose, breaking his concentration. The source of that smell was none other than the actress standing in front of the camera, Tula Bankhead. In the glow of classic Hollywood, Tula was not a woman who followed the standards of the time. She openly hated bathing. For her, cleaning her body every day was an enormous hassle, and she only stepped into the bathroom when she felt she truly couldn't stand it anymore. But the smell of long unwashed sweat wasn't the whole story. Every day, the actress smoked between 100 and 150 cigarettes. The harsh tobacco smoke didn't just linger around her. It had soaked deep into every strand of her hair, clung tightly to every fiber of her clothes, and turned her breath into a giant mobile ashtray. The combination of unwashed body odor and bitter cigarette smoke created a distinctive fragrance that spread into every corner of the set. Colleagues at the time would whisper to each other with uneasy gossip, comparing Tula's smell to a wild cat that had just crawled out of a damp trash heap. The suffocating feeling was pushed to the extreme by her bizarre habits. Tula often refused to wear underwear while filming. This happened so openly that during scenes requiring climbing or vigorous movement, the entire crew was left stunned and blushing in extremely awkward situations. Faced with everyone's complaints, Hitchcock once helplessly joked, "Honestly, I don't know whether to hand her problem over to the wardrobe, makeup, or hair department to solve." For the crowd, it was a hygiene nightmare. But for Tula herself, it was a statement of personality. She saw this smelly, rebellious, and unhidden lifestyle as a symbol of personal freedom, her way of rebelling against the fake facades of Hollywood's upper class. And if Tula used the smell of sweat to rebel, the next sex bomb created a toxic chemical smell from her own platinum blonde hair. Jean Harlow. Toxic chemical smell from platinum blonde hair. Behind the closed door of Jean Harlow's dressing room was not the scent of expensive French perfume, but a thick, eye-watering atmosphere that brought tears to the eyes. This was where the extremely painful weekly beauty process took place to maintain her title as the first platinum blonde sex bomb on the big screen. Jean Harlow and her regular hairstylist, Alfred Pagano, had turned the small room into a real chemistry lab. To achieve that striking snow-white hair color under the lights, they mixed a toxic formula: peroxide, ammonia, Clorox bleach, and pieces of Lux soap. When these chemicals combined, they released a pungent, horrifying smell like hospital disinfectant. The entire dressing room instantly became suffocating and oxygen-deprived, so that anyone who accidentally walked in had to hold their breath and walk right back out. Behind that beauty was physical torment. The sharp chemical smell didn't just float in the air. It seeped deep into every pore, clung to her scalp and every strand of hair. This terrifying artificial odor, mixed with old makeup, sweat, and the heat from the studio lights, created an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Worse than the scent was the pain. The weekly hair bleaching process left Jean Harlow's scalp constantly burned, red, and peeling. Many decades later, after her peak had passed, Alfred Pagano finally dared to recount the details of this horrifying formula in late interviews. He recalled, "That chemical went straight to the brain, so suffocating that I thought both of us would pass out right there in the room. But she never complained. She just closed her eyes and silently endured that torture week after week." Even more terrifying, modern medicine has shown that mixing ammonia and Clorox creates the toxic gas chloramine. Many experts believe that inhaling this poisonous smoke every week silently destroyed Jean's body and contributed to the kidney failure that took her life at just 26 years old. Leaving behind the stinging chemical smell, we now move to another sizzling actress who carried the sour stench from her own dark past. Clara Bow, the legacy of a poor childhood and poor hygiene habits. Amid the lavish parties overflowing with champagne in the 1920s, it was hard to believe that the radiant smile of it girl Clara Bow was hiding an extremely sad past. A past tied to cramped, cockroach and rat-infested slum houses in Brooklyn. Clara Bow was born and raised at the very bottom of poverty. Her childhood was filled with days of hunger and cold, living with a mother who suffered from severe mental illness. In that harsh environment, no one taught little Clara how to brush her hair. No one explained what soap was for, and of course there were no lessons on basic personal hygiene. For Clara back then, simply having a decent set of clothes was already a piece of luck. She often wore the same dirty outfits for days, even weeks on end, because the idea of changing and washing clothes regularly simply didn't exist in her mind. Even after becoming an A-list star and earning millions of dollars, those deeply ingrained habits still clung to Clara. She rarely brushed her teeth, so her breath always carried a very unpleasant smell. Her expensive clothes were worn repeatedly until they turned sour. On set, whenever there were hugging scenes or close-up shots, her male co-stars had to try their hardest not to grimace as the foul odor hit them straight in the face. However, the strange thing about Hollywood is that fame sometimes covers up every flaw. Clara's intense charisma, seductive eyes, and vibrant personality made audiences so enchanted that they easily overlooked the gossip about her body odor. Later biographers explained this with deep sympathy. The truth was that her cruel childhood environment had profoundly affected Clara's psychology, causing her to forever view stepping into a bathtub or brushing her teeth as a hassle and completely unnecessary. Clara Bow didn't bathe because no one taught her, but the next beauty icon was fully conscious when she avoided soap in order to keep the smell of damp earth. Greta Garbo, natural living philosophy and her signature earthy smell. "I want to be alone." That famous line wasn't just dialogue in a movie. It was the most realistic portrait of Greta Garbo's life, beautiful like a statue, but surrounded by absolute seclusion, refusing contact with the outside world, and that isolation extended to the way she cared for her own body. While other actresses layered on scented powders and soaked in soap-filled bathtubs, Greta Garbo chose a completely opposite way of life. She held a strong and stubborn belief that chemicals, especially soap, were the enemy of skin. She believed soap would strip away the precious natural oils, dry out the skin, and rob it of its youthful appearance. Therefore, Greta almost completely rejected soap and very rarely bathed carefully. People who worked with her often saw the famous star wearing the same old, worn-out, and never-washed sweaters over and over. The result of this extreme lifestyle was a very distinctive scent emanating from her body. People didn't call it a sour smell. They called it earthy, a musty odor of damp soil, of long unwashed natural sweat mixed with the greasy oils on her skin and the smell of old wool. Makeup artists, hairstylists, and male co-stars had to silently endure this thick, earthy smell when facing her in close-up shots. They tried to breathe as lightly as possible. No one dared complain because of her enormous power in Hollywood. Surprisingly, this reclusive lifestyle and her unique, one-of-a-kind scent only made audiences more curious. It turned Greta Garbo into someone completely different from the crowd. For Garbo, she didn't care what others thought, because she saw it as the most natural, authentic, and environmentally close way to live. Bette Davis, thick clouds of cigarette smoke clinging to her entire body. The click of a lighter sounded, followed by a stream of gray smoke blown straight into the air. Bette Davis appeared, with her sharp eyes, confident demeanor, and of course, a half-smoked cigarette always in her hand. In Hollywood at that time, everyone knew about her supreme acting talent, but along with her massive career came a habit that made all her co-stars and crew members hold their breath. Bette smoked as if it were her only source of life. Every day, the actress burned through 3 to 4 packs of strong cigarettes. The enormous amount of smoke clung tightly to everything that belonged to her, creating a suffocating atmosphere that followed her everywhere. Every strand of hair, layer of makeup, and even the surface of her skin was soaked with a burnt, harsh smell. Her teeth were yellowed, and her fingers always carried the scent of tobacco resin. Bette's dressing room was constantly shrouded in a hazy fog, to the point that the white walls inside gradually turned a yellowish color. Co-workers on set often joked with each other, "You don't even need to see her. Just smell the burning ashtray, and you know Bette is coming." But behind those laughs was real unease, because this smell challenged anyone's sense of smell. The biggest nightmare came when the script required close-up or kissing scenes. The thick cigarette smell mixed with Bette's dry breath turned on-screen kisses into torture for the male actors. They had to strain to keep a passionate expression while their noses endured the harsh odor blasting straight into their faces. The wardrobe team was also in despair. Bette's costumes after each filming day absorbed such a heavy smell that regular soap couldn't clean them. One wardrobe staff member later recalled, "We couldn't put her clothes straight into the closet. Everything had to be taken outside and hung in the wind all night. Otherwise, the entire storage room would smell like a cheap bar." Despite the whispers, Bette Davis didn't care in the slightest. She even turned this unpleasant smell into a psychological weapon on set. While filming the classic Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, she deliberately blew thick clouds of smoke into the face of her arch-rival Joan Crawford to provoke her. Bette Davis smelled because of her constant smoking habit, but the next woman haunted the entire set with the sour, strong smell of sweat under the blazing hot lights. Joan Crawford. Sour, strong sweat and chemical deodorizing measures. Standing under the enormous film lights of the 1940s was like being roasted in an oven. The blinding light combined with temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, made everyone sweat profusely. And Joan Crawford, a star who always poured every ounce of energy into each role, was always the first to be soaked. After every crying or running scene, her expensive silk dresses or thick shoulder-padded vests would stick tightly to her skin from the sweat pouring out like a shower. The ironic thing about Joan Crawford was that she suffered from severe cleanliness obsession. She personally cleaned the house with strong detergent and wrapped all the sofas in nylon. But this excessive cleanliness actually led to a scent disaster on set. Joan's body produced a large amount of sweat with a distinctive sour smell. When she realized that expensive perfume mixed with sweat only created a nauseating odor, the actress immediately switched to strong disinfecting methods. She asked her assistant to bring liters of medical alcohol to wipe her body continuously. At the same time, she used pure vinegar to rinse her hair, hoping the acid would completely eliminate odor-causing bacteria. And this is where the disaster began. The mixture of salty sweat, fermented sour vinegar, and the sharp smell of medical alcohol created a bizarre combined odor, exactly like walking into a poorly sanitized hospital room. Many male co-stars had to hold their breath until their faces turned red during hugging scenes with her. The thick, wax-based makeup of the era also kept melting from the sweat and alcohol heat, forcing the makeup artists to constantly touch it up. Although she always wanted to appear as a perfect model, Joan's desperate efforts to eliminate odor actually made her the center of sympathetic whispers in the shadows. Leaving behind the sour vinegar mixed with medical alcohol, let's step into the heavy scent of alcohol from a true party queen. Ava Gardner. The smell of alcohol, cigarettes, and the aftermath of all-night parties. At 3 a.m. in a luxurious nightclub in Los Angeles, the pounding music began to fade, giving way to the sound of glasses being cleared. Ava Gardner walked out the door, her voluminous hair messy, her bright red lipstick smudged after countless glasses of gin and whiskey. Instead of going home to remove her makeup and sleep like everyone else, the hottest actress in Hollywood hailed a taxi and went straight to the studio to make it in time for her early morning shoot. That was Ava's familiar, frantic, non-stop lifestyle, especially during the time she was married to singer Frank Sinatra. Their late-night arguments always ended with drinking sessions that didn't stop until they were drunk, stretching from the bar all the way to the makeup room. Appearing in front of the camera in last night's wrinkled clothes, her body gave off every smell of an all-nighter. Sweat from dancing, the burnt smell of cigarette smoke clinging to her coat, and most strongly, the bitter alcohol reeking from her breath. To deal with not having bathed, Ava had the habit of spraying perfume heavily all over her body. However, the strong fragrance sprayed over a body still full of sweat and alcohol created a terrible reaction. Under the stifling heat of the studio lights, this mixture evaporated intensely. The press at the time called it the stale club smell, the characteristic odor of a damp bar the morning after, heavy, dirty, and headache-inducing. During the filming of Mogambo under the scorching heat of Africa, this party smell became even more unbearable. Even though her colleagues grimaced, Ava remained completely calm and ignored every judgmental look. She refused to pretend to be a well-behaved girl. When a polite director reminded her, she just sneered and replied, "I'm a woman of flesh and blood who knows how to enjoy life, not a soulless doll on display." Ava accepted that rundown smell as proof of her wild personality, her thirst for freedom, and her willingness to burn herself out in endless long nights. From the remnants of those drunken nights, we now move to a deeply private torment emanating from inside the body of the world's most seductive icon, Marilyn Monroe. Digestive issues and body odor from personal habits. In the quiet dressing room, Marilyn Monroe sat dazed in front of the mirror, her hands nervously crumpling a tissue. In a moment, she would step out to film an emotional, intimate scene. In the eyes of the whole world, she was the absolute pinnacle of allure. But behind that captivating smile, she was extremely anxious. Not because she feared forgetting her lines, but because of a deeply private torment. Her stomach was starting to cramp and rumble loudly again. What the camera lens never captured was that Marilyn suffered from extremely serious gastrointestinal problems. To cope with the enormous pressure of fame, she abused sedatives, sleeping pills, and champagne. Her eating habits were also very harmful. She often skipped meals during the day and hastily ate sweets late at night. As a result, her digestive system was severely damaged, causing Marilyn to frequently suffer from uncontrollable bloating. The trapped gas escaping made her body emit a very unpleasant smell that came from internal organ imbalance rather than just external sweat. The situation became worse when her hygiene habits became irregular according to her mood. On days when she was depressed, Marilyn would lock herself in a dark room, eat messily in bed, and not bother to bathe. Because she had very sensitive skin, she was afraid to use deodorant because it easily caused rashes. Instead, she chose to pour a large amount of Chanel No. 5 perfume all over herself. The rumor that she only wore Chanel No. 5 to bed actually had a sad undertone. It was her desperate way to cover up the sour smell of a body that was completely exhausted. The peak came while filming The Misfits in the barren Nevada desert. Marilyn's health hit rock bottom. She kept arriving late in a dazed state. During close-up shots, male star Clark Gable had to grit his teeth and strain to maintain a professional smile. One makeup artist later sadly revealed, "It was heartbreaking to see her. Her appearance was dazzling and glamorous, but the scent coming from her showed a person crumbling and falling apart from the inside." The body odor that clung to Marilyn in her final years was not deliberate sloppiness, but the silent cry for help of a victim being drained dry by the Hollywood machine. Marilyn suffered because her health was collapsing, but the next victim carried a horrifying smell forced upon her by the cruel Hollywood system itself. Judy Garland. Stress. Sweat from a frantic shooting schedule and medication. One early dawn on the MGM lot, a photographer from an entertainment magazine was given special access to Judy Garland's restroom to take some behind-the-scenes photos. But the moment the door cracked open, the smile on his face immediately froze. What hit him was not the light scent of a teenage star's powder, but a sour, suffocating wave of air heavy with the chemical smell of medicine. Judy's restroom looked more like a messy field hospital than a place for a movie star. On the dressing table lay empty sedative bottles, crusty pieces of bread, and cold cups of black coffee left overnight. In the corner, a pile of yesterday's sweat-soaked costumes was crumpled and tossed carelessly on the floor, with no one bothering to wash them. Judy sat there, dazed and exhausted. The 18-hour daily schedule had destroyed the young girl. To keep her awake at dawn and force her to sleep at midnight, the studio had stuffed her body with handfuls of colorful pills. When the camera flash went off, it accidentally captured a body that was constantly sweating. This was not sweat from exercise. It was the cold sweat of panic, oozing out when her nerves were stretched to the breaking point. Reporters at the time would whisper to each other that just standing 1 meter away from Judy, they could smell the despair. Unlike other stars who were lazy about bathing, Judy didn't have time to be dirty. Her filth came from not being allowed to rest. She wore the same tight dresses before the sweat had even dried, and her scalp was greasy because she didn't even have 30 minutes to wash her hair. That stress sweat carried a sharp, pungent smell full of the residues of stimulant drugs racing through her blood. One photographer secretly wrote in his notebook, "I raised the camera intending to ask her to smile, but the musty smell rising from her damp dress made me choke. It was exactly like the smell in the hallways of a mental hospital." Judy collapsed because of the forced system, but our final seductive icon used her intelligence to turn the suffocating smell into a weapon of dominance. Mae West. Heavy perfume and the signature smell no one dared mention. The set door swung open, and before anyone could even see Mae West's glamorous figure, their sense of smell was already overwhelmed by a wave of heavy fragrance. Unlike other actresses who always tried to maintain an elegant, spotlessly clean image, Mae carried an atmosphere that was sensual, raw, and full of challenge. She possessed a sizzling hourglass figure, but to maintain those deadly curves, she had to squeeze herself into corsets so tight they made breathing difficult, layered with dozens of heavy beaded fabrics. Moving and performing in that state caused the star to sweat continuously. On top of that, her unrestrained smoking habit left her body with a constant burnt smell. For an ordinary person, the mix of salty sweat and cigarette smoke would be a fatal flaw. But Mae West was no ordinary person. Instead of secretly trying to wash it off or hide her insecurity, she chose to attack everyone's sense of smell head-on. Mae's solution was extremely flamboyant. She doused her wrists, cleavage, and undergarments with the strongest, most overpowering musk perfumes. When this thick fragrance mixed with her natural sweat and tobacco smell, it created an extremely powerful and haunting blend. It wasn't fresh or delicate. It was heavy, thick, and carried the raw breath of flesh. Even though that smell sometimes left colleagues gasping for air during close-up shots, absolutely no one dared tease or mock her. The reason was simple. Mae's boundless confidence behind the glamorous frames and perfect smiles on screen. Hollywood's golden age never smelled of roses or luxurious perfume as we imagined. What covered that place was actually the smell of sweat drained through endless days of non-stop labor, the sour aftertaste of a poor childhood that had not yet healed, and the thick clouds of cigarette smoke from rebellious souls fighting against a harsh system. Each haunting scent attached to these 10 beauty icons was not just a living habit, but a trace of the tearful and tragic corners hidden behind the glamorous halo. Stage lights can deceive the eyes, but the sense of smell cannot. It always reveals the rawest truth about the high price of fame and greatness. If you found this content worth watching, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring untold secrets of the entertainment world with me. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.